Don't be too harsh with the man that sins, or pelt him with words, or stone, or disdain. Unless you're sure you have no sins of your own, and it's only wisdom and love that your heart contains. For you know, if the tempter's voice should whisper as soft to you as it did to him when he went astray, it might cause you to falter too. Just walk a mile in his moccasins before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. If just 1 hour you could find a way to see through his eyes instead of your own views.
There's another stanza on the back.
Okay. I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind and narrow-minded, even unkind. There are people on reservations and in the ghettos who have so little hope and too much worry on their minds. Brothers, there but for the grace of God go you and I. Just for a moment, slip into his mind and traditions and see the world through his spirit and eyes before you cast a stone or falsely judge his conditions. Remember to walk a mile in his moccasins, and remember the lessons of humanity taught to you by your elders. We will be known forever by the tracks we leave in other people's lives, our kindnesses and generosity. Take the time to walk a mile in his moccasins. That's very good. And what is this one?
The next one is something that we've read some Matthew Geit before. This is his reflection on Psalm 26, also about judging others.
So when you, the phrase walk a mile in his moccasins, that's where this came from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they think it may have been an expression, but my tiny bit of research yesterday did not turn that up. But most people want to give her the attribution for coming up with that, plus there, but by the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
But I'm sure those were expressions.
For there, but by the grace of God go I.
Yeah, so I think that both of those expressions have been around. But she, immortalized them in
Yeah.
poetry.
Yeah.
So, good morning, Lawson.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lawson.
Good morning. Glad to see everybody.
Well, I just want to say
Glad to see you.
thank you again for the reception and the organization of the folks on Warner's Path. Tuesday was a really great day. Thank you.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, welcome all. And I'm sorry that I'm a little bit tardy because that's just the way it goes. If you're 10 minutes late, you're 10 minutes late all day. That's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Yep. I bought some spring, do you wanna tell me what happened? I bought some spring training baseball tickets. I thought they were delivered to me. They say they were delivered to me. I can't find them and no one knows what happened.
Oh,
And so I was just like a little bit, then I felt like really like an old lady, like really I thought, it sounds like somebody doesn't know technology and perhaps that's the issue. I'm willing to admit that. And then anyway, it was like it was a moment.
Did you
ever
I
solve
just
it?
had to come away.
Did you ever solve it yet?
No, ma'am. No, I haven't found them.
Gonna be all right.
It's gonna be fine. Even if I erase them, they can resend them. It's not a big deal. All right, so here we are, but I was getting really like, what's Todd gonna say? How's this gonna go? Blah, 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 blah. So here we are on part 7. We are gonna extend this class through next Thursday
Okay.
because we don't start our Latin program until the following week. So we did have kind of an extra cushion week. So
Because
maybe,
we never cover 8 and 9.
I don't think we
in
are.
one day.
I don't think we're gonna be able to do 3 today. I doubt we'll get through 1. Because I think the more we can identify. And the less time we've spent. We've spent a lot of time early on with blessed are you who. We hear that often, we know it often. These we hear and we've heard about, but perhaps they haven't really been as much a part of our lexicon of how we live our lives as much. So can I get Sharon, will you read part 7 on page 122? Judging, asking, blessing. Thank you for my coffee.
You're welcome. Judge not,
that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened. Or which one of you, if his son asked him for bread, would give him a stone? Or if he asked for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets.
Mm. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be God.
All right, page 124.
Allison, there's just one part of this that is kind of confusing to me.
Right.
Yes, that do not give dogs what is holy and do not throw your pearls before pigs. I'm not quite sure what it's telling us there.
Anyone else?
Well, there was something earlier, Linda, about don't put pearls in front of pigs, they stomp them.
So yes, I think Luke's gospel says it too. Do not throw your works before swine.
Yeah.
I get maybe, what is considered so holy that you would not give to your dog? Is that?
Well, that might be why it's confusing to her. 'Cause
Yeah,
what
what's
do we
considered?
know? Is it
Here are the
his-
top 10 holy things you don't give to dogs.
Yeah, I'm saying we wouldn't give
I would
communion
get- I
bread
would-
to the
But I
dogs.
wonder if it's referring to dogs whoop, whoop, or something else.
Dogs and swine are sort of lumped
Yeah.
together as unworthy
too.
of your.
Not actual dogs, not actual pigs, but people who are,
That would seem even less, that would be even more hard to comprehend, wouldn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
That there would be certain levels of
People
people.
that you say,
Yeah.
okay, you don't. So,
We know swine, okay, so we can think of it historically, right? We know swine were unclean animals. Okay, dogs, I don't, sorry, I must have missed that day in seminary, but. I
But
don't
the
know
scripture
that.
also says even the dogs. So they were sort of seen as.
Well, like that's the gal, right? The woman, that has the conversation with Jesus.
Crumbs under the table.
Even dogs get to do that, or what about, I mean, these are from different scripture, from different writers of
Yeah.
the gospel, but also I'm thinking about, Lazarus and the poor man, right? Like, the guy who was outside the rich man's gates and the dogs came
Yeah.
and licked his sores.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of other times we hear about pigs and pigs and dogs. We hear about pigs when they, when
Go over
Jesus
the-
cast, yes, he cast the demons into the pigs and they jump over the cliff.
Oh, yes, so many.
I think of a Christmas story where the dogs get the Bumpus's dogs get the Thanksgiving turkey and drag it off. I'm sorry, that's the first thing that comes to mind. The dad thought that
Is
that
that-
turkey was holy because he's in there tasting and smelling.
Oh, yeah.
That's-
That's all he's been waiting for. Well, it's close. It's a Christmas story. It's close. But you're right. I mean, I love the analogy that the dad thought that, I mean, this is,
It was holy.
that's
it was a
all
shrine to
Christmas
him.
meant to him.
Yeah, it
Was
was that
basically
turkey.
was gonna be the
And these
turkey.
mangy dogs.
He came in and stole it.
Stole his turkey.
So,
maybe I can look at it as like, don't give your attention. Or,
Okay.
to other gods or things.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's kind of like how you spend your energy. How do you spend what is holy? Jesus also said, right, like go into a town, announce yourself, and if no one wants you in that town, knock the dust off your feet and leave.
Right.
Go on, right? Peace be with you and I'm going, right?
Lawson.
Lawson, go ahead.
I was thinking, just in line with what you were saying, be careful how you witness or when you witness. If you want the message to be received, you need not to just blather out what God has shown you, what you know of God. It just I think it's just saying, be careful how you witness if you want your witness to be received and those persons' lives to be touched.
Thank you. Yeah, does that make some sense? That makes sense to me, Lawson, for sure, that it's not about, so I would go back, like, in terms of the section, right, we're not judging. We're at, it's twofold in a way, we're not judging, but we're also asking, receiving, and, seeking, asking, receiving. So there's might be, it's a bifurcated message. And I think in the middle of it then, right, we have these dogs and these pigs. So it is, maybe it's transitional. It doesn't say kick the dog. It doesn't say slaughter the pig. It doesn't say go and talk to your neighbor about how terrible that dog is. Or how much you hate the pig. So it doesn't recommend, action like gossip or, violence. I mean, what does it not say? So that I'm aware it's not saying those things, which might be my tendency in a situation to something that I have labeled dog or pig. To sort of tell you, Laura, that guy, that dog, stay away from that dog. That dog's rabid. Maybe a real mongrel, not worthy of our time, or that I'm gonna get my gun and shoot that dog, right?
Well, maybe too, it goes along with, in this part, there's the one part that talks about the difference between discernment and judgment.
Yes.
And this seems like that.
Yes, and I think that goes along with what Lawson was
Right.
saying too.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's turn then, between, discernment and that first part there, number 46 on page 124, Jesus was serious, then we will see the difference between discernment and judgment. And I don't know, I don't know what that space is between those two locators, right? Like, I don't know what that journey is like for us. It is probably not quite as concrete or as obvious, but yet when I was thinking of things that I say, it's easy here because it's fruit. No, I mean, an apple and an orange, I know are not alike. It takes the pressure off of us, doesn't it? To sort of say, yeah, I recognize an apple and I recognize an orange. But then and then I can see his point. Oranges are bad because they're not apples. Or vice versa, however he phrases that, right? For us, that mental process that we do when we discern or we judge.
Yeah, that's a judgment if you think apples are better than oranges.
Yeah, right, absolutely, but how do we do that? Like, can you share a thing in your own life where you've. Okay, when I started teaching school, I thought all children were wonderful. Until I actually had them.
Absolutely.
What was I thinking?
Welcome to the group.
Right, but I mean, and when I had them in my classroom, right? Even as a student teacher, or even doing practicums or whatever, I still thought all children were wonderful and that anyone who made disparaging remarks about them or anyone who thought less of them, I had something to say about them. But when I got in the classroom and I started to teach, I started to make assumptions about all kinds of things. In order for my time to go smoothly or my plan, my day. Laura was a teacher too. So I'm like, you just sort, and then I started to sort of say there were apples and oranges. Now that's a discernment over time. Hopefully I didn't get to, well, I did quit teaching. So I think when I quit teaching, I had gotten into some are better than others. Which is why I quit. I mean, maybe not. There were a lot of other reasons, but I think that's why. I quit.
Better or different?
Oh, no, some were definitely better.
Yeah,
Well, the
the
more
ones
you
with
got to know them.
motivation were better. than
The ones with
without
motivation, the ones whose parents gave it Tinker's Dam, the one who's,
What do you-
the ones who bathed regularly. I mean, it didn't, you know, I mean, there was all kinds of ways I could make discernment about that, or thought I was discerning.
Mhm.
That, it's not the best example, but I'm trying to prompt you all into a way to think about this. Because it's not just something he writes on a page. I mean, it's something you can identify with in the global, I get that. You can see, oh yes, I know Jesus. I know Jesus was not about condemning. We know that. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's not a condemnation. So, however, he did identify when things were not, you know, when he went into the temple and turned over the tables, or when he said things about Pharisees and Sadducees, or when he even said things, you know, in kind of this week, like at the end of the gospel, he says something like, oh my gosh, how much longer before you all figure this out? Right?
But
So,
that's not what he said. How much longer do I have to put up with you?
right,
Yeah.
that's right, right. How much longer I have to put up with you not being able to figure this out?
Yeah.
Right, that's a preacher's interpretation on that one, Lawson, for sure.
Didn't he also call them swine?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that goes, yeah.
goes there.
Yeah.
He did, he did. So, so anyway, have you ever done this yourself?
Absolutely.
Us and them, I don't know how you wanna say it,
Mhm.
right? This difference between judgment and discernment. And how, and maybe,
Or done to you, upon you.
okay, let's talk about that. As a gay man, I mean, has that ever happened to you?
Last Saturday,
It's like, I missed-
Yeah.
As a gay person, has that ever happened? where
Last
you've
Saturday.
been- Yeah,
in our dismantling, I don't wanna give it away, but
right,
it was obvious. It's like, whoa, and they called on it and denied it.
yeah,
It's like, wait a minute, you want me to dismantle this,
not this, it's,
turn my cheek and help? And you're blatantly showing something that is god awful, that has nothing to do with the exercise, that is so transparent to me and to others.
Talking about.
So,
dismantling racism, he was in a class.
Oh, the
Sharon
racism.
was in the
Yeah,
class.
I was there.
Oh, okay, well, that's what he's talking about.
and it was like,
Okay,
and I
It was
wasn't looking
fabulous.
for it, that's just it, you know, sometimes it's habits, like, okay, where's my gotcha? You know, you're doing this, and it's like, nah. Yeah, I was like, oh, really? Come on. And then it's like, you know, that's probably not a fair question. Well, sure it is. There's lots of isms, you move on. Like, wow, okay,
And today we'll focus on this ism.
yeah, so
That's
take
it.
this wall down, dismantle this, but build this one higher. So I really, to me, it feels like you're just trading one for the other. Like, take shiny object away from that, don't make that problematic anymore, but make this one as big as you want, cause I agree, it's awful. And it's like, whoa, it's just so, it was just odd. It was odd, yeah. So yes, I wasn't looking for it, but you know, it was there. I tried to just like find another example, of, well, that's not what they mean.
Yeah.
Sharon Hoover's going, whoa. So, yeah, it happens though, you just.
there are plenty of ways that it happens to us. And, so that's sometimes more flagrant. And there's plenty of ways that we still participate in it as well. And I guess because you look for your tribe, you look for safety, you look for understanding, you look for likeness.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that too. Are sometimes looking for likeness does what? It cuts us off.
Yeah,
I think sometimes, even rather than looking for likeness, we're looking for how can my tribe be at least one step up and not that? You know, I mean, we were talking about tribal stuff. Tribal stuff and,
but I find myself wanting to help that discussion versus blasted in the evaluation.
Yeah,
Hate,
absolutely.
hate, hate. I'm like, okay, how do I educate? How do I get more to discernment versus judgment? If I start judging that, I'm just as equally guilty.
So our call is toward discernment. He spends time in this section talking about the two meanings of the word judgment,
Right,
right? To condemn is one, and then to discern being the other.
Yeah.
We use the word discernment, and it's like to me, discernment is kind of a church word anyway. And maybe you heard other people talking about it in that context, that's fine. I think when we spend a lot of time discerning, you know, what is a call? What is God saying? What are we to do? How am I supposed to behave? And then, so, I think if we can remember that nothing is less than, maybe we'll be better for it. And in terms of our own sense of, if our thoughts are moving us toward in a discernment, less than thoughts,
yeah.
Yeah.
then perhaps we need to go back and examine, you know, if we are condemning or if we are discerning. I wish it were as easy as apples and oranges for us.
It's some, in the illustration.
The fruitism.
Well.
Sorry,
Oh, another sort of fruit.
another sort of.
It's almost like the ones who are protesting, what is it, our readers, I brought them this week.
Yeah, I like this. Those guys were good.
Deaf to apples. I
Yes.
wanna tell them, okay, if you're gonna say.
God
deaf-
hates apples, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, God, anyway, I want you
You
to,
see the progression of how this moves, right?
yeah, right?
In when we become judge it, what happens?
I want, instead of saying, I don't like your sign, deaf to apples, I wanna tell them, you know, the word apples is misspelled. So if you're gonna do your signs, you need to spell it right, then I'll feel more hated. You know, it kind of turns the, thank you for correcting my sign, now I'm gonna bet, you kind of blast a hole in it. So that's what I feel like doing when I hear that versus.
You
I think
look for the not easier way, but.
Do you want me to hold your sign while you read, you know, wipe your glasses or something?
Right.
I think we
That does sound
probably
like you, Kevin.
can figure we're in a dangerous place of judgment. If our sentence begins with the 4 words, at least I'm not,
Yeah, right.
to me, that's judgment, that's where that.
Yeah, because we wouldn't normally think of it that way, would we?
No,
We wouldn't normally say that, you know, that's her paragraph in there by the grace of God, which we all have hopefully learned we never say anywhere outside except quoting her poem.
Right.
Because it is not God who's making those decisions. It is the world who makes those decisions and we try to fit into it, and that I hope you recognize from your dismantling class about privilege
Oh,
and
yeah.
power.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, but, yes, and so when we say, well, at least I'm not like, I don't know, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what we're actually saying. We're actually saying, you're a dog.
It's a little bit of Animal Farm.
It is a lot of animal. farm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love the story that Kate read to the kids at art camp this
Yes.
summer.
yes,
About the red people and the
Mhm.
blue people.
oh,
yeah,
yeah,
And I
Yeah,
especially
it's just-
loved their reaction at the end when one of the boys said, and then when they were friendly with each other, you know, realized that worthy, you know, he said, and then they had purple children. I
We
said,
can
"He
hope.
got it."
we can hope, right,
Take one.
that's so cute.
it was cute,
Better than
yeah,
none.
Yeah, red and blue makes purple.
It does. It does. Okay, anything else about this? I think, you know, it's a lot of food for thought for us. You know, as you're starting to make this, I was writing my sermon, yesterday, so anyway, as we're starting to make this turn from the period of Epiphany into the time of Lent, and we're looking, maybe searching for, what is our Lenten discipline going to be? Maybe some of the words of these chapters will lend themselves toward kind of, I don't know, what are some of the ways I might be thinking about a Lenten discipline during these 40 days of Lent? And maybe it is just a closer examination of judgment in terms of condemnation or discernment, right? I mean, I think this section 7 gives us lots of places where some extra time in prayer or contemplation or meditation on these topics might be super fruitful, super fruitful for us, or they have been for me, just as I've been thinking about what am I gonna be, how am I gonna, what is my spiritual discipline? What is that gonna be? How am I gonna be engaged
You
in?
got to bring love into the situation now. How can you make such a bad judgment when there's so much love? And I just can't have that bad judgment when there's so much
There's
love.
love. Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's hold that love and see how that shows up again in the next couple of chapters, Ginger. Let's turn on page 126 now. If Jesus was serious, then we cannot judge and love at the same time. Did you look ahead? Yes,
No,
you
I did not.
All right, he quotes, the theologian that he quotes, Greg Boyd says, you can't love and judge at the same time. It's impossible to ascribe unsurpassable worth to others when you're using others to ascribe worth to yourself. So here's the picture of Jesus. He's holding everyone in love. I'm guessing that's the fulcrum there. That's the net, and everyone is in it. No one is outside of that net. But when we judge, we have me and others. This is kind of what Sharon was talking about. Okay. Because it condemns other people in judgment. We condemn others. Maybe you say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I think
That's
someone
what it
tried to
is.
dissuade Kevin from that topic when he was trying to bring this up. We have to acknowledge, no matter what our job is, but no matter what the purpose of whatever we're doing is, sometimes that
Listen,
listen, yeah. You know, to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Not explain away, not anything. I hear that. I hear that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think that could have been changed easily into construction as opposed to deconstruction. All right. So how do you feel about that? Sinful judgment devalues a person or a group of people. Okay, beloved, we live in a time of division. Maybe no one agrees with me on that, but that's how I see the world, kind of. Not that I want to, I'm trying not to participate in it, and yet sometimes my language might give me away. Sometimes the way I might be thinking about groups of people might give me away. So I'm trying to separate out knowing that God loves everyone. This is what the picture was. Jesus with that group of people on that scale. And I think maybe we could say, oh, that's great. That's God. I'm not God. Clearly, I'm not God. Not right? Not my problem. God, you know, you could in a very simplistic way say, well, that's what God does. But I'm not God. And I don't love all people. In fact, I know several people who feel this way, and they're struggling with this. This is hard. So, does this help you? Does it confound you? Does it, irritate you? Does it, tell me.
God shares his love with us, so that makes it easier. We have God's love to help us love.
We do, but does that, how far does that move the needle? About people
Well,
I
I
disagree
want it.
with. Oh, yeah, well, about people I disagree with. People that I believe are behaving in a way that's not godlike. Christian, you supply the word.
So when those feelings get stronger and the balance gets off, you have to recognize, I have
Thank you for
Tried
using
to-
that, yeah.
to look at this point of view. And in terms of thinking God loves everybody. He wants us to love everybody. And that's when I have to grapple with that because it's been brought to my attention because it's so strong, maybe, you know, that I have to deal with that. And at least struggle with it. Instead of feed it or ignore it.
Last paragraph, in condemnation, we are declaring they are of no worth to God. And I can't see any of you either on the screen or in this room that would ever be comfortable saying that.
That,
That whoever we've condemned is of no worth to God.
No.
None of you would say that. Not, I don't, I mean,
No matter
it doesn't matter who, right?
who, somehow.
Somehow God makes that
we
right.
always use the, you know, Hitler is the ultimate. That's a horrible person, and you know, and to try to apply God's love to Hitler is a hard thing. I mean,
But what's the scale then? You know, like we have imposed scales all over the place. We do it because we stick people in prison and we've imposed a scale on that, right? Like that's not a God I mean, I realize we have the 10 Commandments, but the punishment is not ascribed. That it's a sin is ascribed. We got that from those 10 and then the 594 or whatever it is, the book of Leviticus. But the punishment is not ascribed. You and you and you would have been sent to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
As a punishment by somebody of your unworthiness.
Right.
Because of your choice of who you love.
Choice, yes.
Right, excuse me.
No, that would have been the argument,
As,
correct?
as the fact.
it would have been what,
So anyway, and maybe many of others would too. I mean, I have a disease that's chronic. That requires I take medication to stay alive,
Right,
then I would have too been sentenced to death.
or you could have been as simple as brown eye, blue eye,
Right.
left hand, right
Oh,
hand.
yeah.
Right.
blonde
It's
hair.
been different things at different times.
Yeah,
Anyway, my point being. That's why we have to assume, we have to agree, we have to make our peace with. God loves all of God's creation
Yeah,
equally. Now, of course, I don't agree with the regime of Nazi Germany. Of course I don't. And of course, I think it was terrible and horrible and we're still paying for that sin. But again, if I don't know what the scale is, y'all, where would I fall? How often have I condemned people because of what I thought they did or said or were?
or what about the millions of people who put that person in authority?
Yeah.
Cause they
Voted.
themselves.
Well, they,
Went, we did this.
Right.
When I lived there, that was that,
yeah,
in the eighties,
yeah,
they were there when
yes,
they elevated him.
right.
So are they just as equally guilty? Do they fall in that same ascribed judgment?
Well, certainly during Nuremberg, we tried to legislate that. We
Right,
tried to prescribe, that.
yeah,
But,
nine.
all right, well, we think that, okay, we could talk about enslavement in our own
That's
country.
what I was gonna say, that in our own culture,
Mhm.
I have a hard time connecting or feeling guilt about the Holocaust, because I didn't have any part in it, nor did my ancestors, but I did have part in slavery.
Yeah.
And that things come down through generations, and you have to come face to face with that and deal with that from God's perspective, and whew, it can just,
Yeah, but
Not
I'm
yet.
reading a book right now about the our prison systems.
Wow.
And, it's just, you know, it's political, it's weirdly connected to God, it's like it's a mess. And it's gotten more of a mess, and it just keeps getting more messy. It doesn't get better. It just gets messier. So anyway, I don't know. That's what made me think about that, you know, yes, we have rules on how we live together, because if we don't follow those rules, then we're separated from each other, we're separated from God, we're separated from nature, and that's sin, and that part, I hope we do understand. How we deal with that and what punishment looks like is mostly constructed on our already existing preconceived notions about who's better and who's worse. The worth of people in prison, right, is, are they poor? Are they colored? Are they stupid? Are they, you know, do they behave, you know, white people with means don't normally go to jail. Just like, we can look at the numbers. Yeah, you can tell me like Alex Murdoch. Okay, fine. Right? Okay, good. I get that. But most of the time, you know, his sentence would be, I mean, a black guy'd already be dead. I mean, that would have already happened. They would have already given him the needle. So, so it's already based on this concept. That's what I mean, that there's someone lower than me, has no worth.
Allison, I'm thinking, you know me and my visual stuff.
Yeah.
But as I look at the picture of Jesus holding that scale and, you know, all are loved, I am reminded how important it is for me to keep looking to the top. It's not as much at the age I am now, but as I was growing up, because this thing is bouncing around. There are people sometimes trying to grab my arm and push me off because maybe I don't belong there. There's me maybe feeling that way about somebody with a lot more money than me. There are black people who are crying and I'm watching them be thrown off and I can't get them. And that thing is shaking. It's shaking the whole time. And it's so important to keep looking up, remembering who's holding that, and that is true. He is love, and we are all loved.
This intersects so much. I thought this particular chapter intersected so much with our conversation on Monday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, well, this is how we're never gonna finish this book, but if Jesus was serious, then we will practice self-awareness, not self-righteousness. Who wants to look in the mirror? It's hard, isn't it? It's very difficult to look in the mirror. And, so, it's easy to see others' faults. This is the part about, you know, you are a horrible person. Taking that speck out of your neighbor's eye before taking the log out of your own. Therapists have said this for years, right? Your problem with something might actually be your problem. The thing you are saying that you don't like about someone else may be actually what you don't like about yourself.
I think that's true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why we're able to articulate it so well.
Called projection.
It's called projection, yeah. And what does looking in the mirror then do, break that cycle?
See yourself,
Yeah.
although this says your issues are larger than they appear.
I love that part, like the mirror on your car.
Yeah. If as bad as they look to me, they're even worse.
Maybe, and we're holding at the same time, just like that scale that we are loved. I love the order of these sayings of Jesus, right? Like, let's get the background, you are loved. And then what are the things that keep us from receiving that love? This is one of those things. Self-righteousness keeps us from receiving that love.
Because we don't think we need it.
Well, why, I mean, we already know the things we know about ourselves. I mean, it would be very unusual, particularly at this age of our lives, y'all, that we don't know the things we know about ourselves. maybe if you just woke up and you know, had been Rip Van Winkle for a few thousand years and you didn't realize that you make these kind of judgments or you feel this way about something or whatever. But we know that. We do know these things. And then oftentimes these things are the things that we think make us or others. It doesn't just stop here. When I think I'm not worthy, how could I possibly assume that you are? Or how much easier is it for me to say, you're a terrible person? I don't know. But God doesn't love me. But it's connected. That's all I'm trying to say. It's connected. The things are connected. They don't stand by themselves. The cheese never stands alone. You're like such a grandmother.
That is profound.
Such a grandmother today. You know,
That's
Laura
good.
Goodell, you know. The
That's
cheese stands
real
alone.
good.
The cheese stands alone. No.
Well, I missed that one. All right.
You know that one?
Yeah, I do now. It took me a
Yeah,
minute.
Okay. You don't want to be inside my head, Kevin. Like, I don't want to be inside yours. I know.
Don't look there. It's a dangerous
It's a
neighborhood.
date, yeah. All right. He talks here, rest of this, which I think is interesting right now. They held Jesus's trial under the cover of darkness so that no one would come to Jesus's defense. Finally, the Sanhedrin arranged for false witnesses to testify against Jesus to fabricate a reason to execute him. They used their power to protect their status rather than to seek justice. They manipulated the judicial system. Does this ever happen, beloved?
We're living it.
I think it happens all the time. It's always happened. You know, we work toward it maybe not happening, but,
You're right.
they were so blinded by their self-righteousness, they could no longer discern right from wrong. Or godliness from wickedness.
Makes me think of something I read this morning online about organ transplants.
About what?
Yeah,
Organ transplants
yeah,
and
yeah,
how they often, instead of going to the people at the top of the list, they go to white, better educated.
mhm.
That was the
Oh,
issue.
This is what he's talking about. This was what the sample was about
Okay,
in the,
Us picking who
who's worthy.
receives the organ.
oh, okay, yeah.
So what were your thoughts?
Well, that's just the same, it's, yeah,
Yeah,
And justify, that would be hard. If you're around that table, okay, who do we pick? We have
Yeah.
2 hearts and 10 people,
Mhm.
or 2 kids, whatever it is.
Yeah,
That's tough.
it is Yeah. tough.
Yeah.
Got to be terrible.
well, but the process as it's, and I read the article.
Yeah.
The process as it's explained is that the organs are to go to the most sick. It's not a discernment,
Physically sick.
right?
Uh-huh.
It's not like, you're not supposed to look at who they are, how old I mean, you're not,
How mental they are.
you're not.
Nothing about their background, just their physical
And
illness.
some of that wouldn't be, and maybe that's not true, or maybe that's my assumption, you know, like that's what I thought, but certainly I have known alcoholics who received new livers because they were the most ill. You know, is that how it should have gone? I should have been like, are you sure you're gonna quit drinking? Okay, I mean, you're gonna follow them around and check to make sure they're not drinking anymore? In this person's case, they still drank.
So was the article about the person receiving or deciding or?
It was just the whole
It was
system,
about the
how
system.
hospitals
Oh.
decide. You know, the companies that get the transplants and, you know, there were a lot of factors besides those, you know, like could they get there on time? Is it a
Oh.
fit for the person?
Right,
But it still was talking about how it's not a fair system.
if you look at it, the breakdown,
Mhm.
ours said that it was only an hour. It was
Yeah.
the hearts were gonna be there
And
in
they've
1
been
hour.
identified as a match.
yeah,
I
So
think,
it
well,
and it
Yeah.
still went to the white person?
Oh, boy.
Lawson used to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
I think another factor has to be considered too. And having worked in a hospital, in palliative care, and, who, in what body has the greatest success of this organ to take?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, they are so rare that has to be considered too. You don't, it like, who, I couldn't see, so I don't know if Laura, it's multifactorial in the
Yeah.
decision.
Mhm.
It's not just where the greatest need is. Because it takes a lot of effort to transplant one.
Right.
Taking the organ, keeping the organ alive, and then putting it in the person and getting the person repaired. It's a very lengthy process, and you have to, one of the factors has got to be, when is this process gonna work?
Yeah,
If the
Well, it did
patient-
talk about all the other factors, but it still came to the conclusion that lots of times when there was a choice to be made, it was not the neediest, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes it won't be the neediest, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they have an ethics committee at the hospital. Who did it say that, who, or who makes this decision? It's not just one person, it's a whole group of people who make these decisions.
And it's hard because every circumstance has a history. A history of receiving poor health care, a history of not being able to afford to go to the doctor, a history of a system that has been weighted in favor of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, you know,
It
like, it's just, it doesn't exist like in a vacuum either, and I get that, and that's, you know, so the success rate of somebody would be more likely if, yes, they receive good medical care, and yes, they were gonna have access to the best doctors going forward, and yes, if they, you know, so we have an unequal system of delivering medical care
Yeah,
that's been based on race for a long time. And so like, it's so hard to sort of sort this all out, like you can't, this pile and this pile, and then this, it's so difficult. It's just,
it's so
I think all
complex.
anybody says is, let's just say that is true. What I don't like right now is it's saying, everybody's saying, well, that's not true. That's not the one. What?
It is so complex.
Right, right.
I feel like we're gone, so backwards right now. You know, I mean, there was, you know, there were times when, you know, you just hated groups. You didn't need to know why, gays or blacks or women or men or, you know, anything. And then, you know, we went through a phase of, I hate to put it this way, well, some of my best friends are whatever. You know, but now we've come back to seeing that the greatest hero right now in the country is a young man who shot in the back the CEO of a healthcare company, that he knew nothing at all about that man, other than now I'm gonna group him in with all of us who have ever been hurt by not having a medical bill paid. It's his fault. And they've made a folk hero out of this guy. I mean, I don't know if you've watched any of the news on that. It's
the fundraisers, right?
absolutely bizarre. And, you know, he may end up getting off. So now all of a sudden, we're back in the just, you know, put them in this box. This person is in this box and this person is in this box, and that's all I have to say.
So how much more important then are these words of Jesus? I mean, that's, you know, I'm gonna try to get us back.
That's it.
So that we have 10 minutes in our class period. I just wanna get back to how much more important then,
Absolutely.
is this?
Yeah.
Because the things that maybe we have put our trust in, I'll buy the best, with the best intentions. That's not a judgment on my part. I do. But then I'm thinking, Mike, goodness, Mike, maybe we should just take more. The problem being, with that is that there are groups of people who take these words of Jesus very differently than we do. Right? And so yes, we do this in community, and thank God for you, because apparently there's fewer and fewer of us. According to the news this morning about how many people proclaim a Christian faith. Or a faith of any kind. It wasn't even determined by, were you a follower of Christ? Were you a follower of anyone? Bless you. Or any kind of tenet of any kind of faith. 1 in 6 of people who were raised by people who didn't go to church are going to church. So with that kind of declining membership, so thank goodness that you're here.
Oh, I have one.
Thank goodness that we're here and that we can talk together. But again, that we can explore the expansiveness of Jesus's language. Not just for our understanding, but for our hearts. You know, so, shall we move on?
Please.
All right,
Yeah.
1:30,
It's
what?
June 15th.
I know. If Jesus was serious, then we will ask rather than manipulate others for what we need. We will ask. This is such a great interpretation of this for me. We automatically think he is speaking about prayer in our relationship to God. That's appropriate because Jesus applies this to prayer in the verses that follow. Rather than attempting to twist or manipulate God into blessing us, Jesus invites us to trust his goodness by simply asking him for what we need. But we must not dismiss what has come before this statement in the sermon either. Before the famous ask, seek, knock passage, Jesus spoke about judging others and the hypocrisy of focusing on our brother's failure rather than our own. The invitation to ask, seek, knock comes within the context of how we relate to our brothers and sisters. And only after that, it is applied to how we relate to God. Is it like, make sure your house is in order before you start going after someone else's house. Make sure your own make sure your own stuff is together first. And so I thought that was so interesting. I'd never really put it together. I knew it was about prayer. I knew it was about, when I've taught it to children, I've taught it in that context, it's about prayer. But never like, oh, let me get right with my brothers and my sisters. So the 2 ways we motivate people, he says, you might have others, I don't know, judgment and force. Certainly as a parent, I can think about the times I forced my children to do things. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't as terrible as the force that my parents used with me, but I still used force. Withholding something. It makes it difficult for us. How about this? Controlling people through manipulation and deceit. Wow. Yesterday, notice from the government that anybody who's undocumented has to be fingerprinted. I'd say that might be manipulation and deceit, because the real reason is once you go to get fingerprinted,
You're quiet.
you're sorry. And I know when people want to comply because they live here and they want to stay here, that they will go and get fingerprinted.
And if you have $5 million, you can get a gold
There you
card.
Yes,
You can get one.
a gold card.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of
So,
a green card.
Anyway, it's hard for me not to say it, and they'll tattoo a number on your arm right after that, but. So anyway, asking others for what we need or want is difficult. First, it requires us being honest and vulnerable about our intention, and we risk exposing ourselves to rejection. And second, it's difficult because it affirms the dignity and status of the other person as our equal or our superior. In other words, asking requires humility. If we learn to ask for what we need with honesty and humility rather than scheming, Jesus says we will discover a far better way of life with both God and others. Sometimes our life does present us with things that look like detours and workarounds. I get that. You know, when I look at that picture there of the windy road to the goal. But then I think about all the machinations in my own life around prayer, around. Like, you all may have heard me tell this story. I got a new spiritual director, and then she was talking to me about my practices, and I was talking about my prayer life, and she was asking me the things I pray for and about, and I said, well, that's kind of doesn't rise to the level of what I ask God about. And she said, where does that go? And I said, in a room. And she said, could we open that door? And I was like, no. I was just kept opening the door and shut, you know, like, God doesn't really need, that's bad. That's not, that doesn't rise to the level of what I think is God worthy in my prayer life. Well, that's kind of silly, right? But that's the kind of manipulations that I did. I probably still do them. I think that room still exists. You know, things I don't think God wants to know about or care about, or like God doesn't know what's already going through my mind. If I believe to God to be the kind of God I profess God to be. If I don't believe God to be that kind of God, that's a whole different topic. If I don't, you know, if I'm a kind of a functional atheist, really, like I like God, I like going to church, like talking about God, but have I turned my life and my will over to God? And this is one of the things about 12 steps that keep me in the moment about that. But anything else? That was like, what, did you come here today to hear Allison talk? Apparently you did, okay. All right, that's all right. Anything else about this? All right, well then we're gonna go on, 50, that sounds like a nice number. If Jesus was serious when God already wants, then God already wants to bless us. This is in the same character as my prayer room. He doesn't need convincing. I love this picture.
Yeah.
Jesus standing outside the gate
Right
saying,
here.
I'm right here, actually. No ticket needed.
This superstore.
I can't read these little tiny.
This is
print.
supplies for your journey. Come to the Christian Superstore.
Well, it says, meet with God, pay your toll here, guides available
It's
for
like
additional
Lucy and the
fee.
nickel.
Yeah. This is going to be tough, the hikers say.
Yeah.
No, not really. Jesus is standing right next to them.
And he says, oh, I'm right here.
Right. So if Jesus is rejecting, the author says, two very common ideas. The popular vision of the capricious, malevolent God, the punishing God, oftentimes the God of Hebrew scripture that we tend to hold, or the representation of a father figure or patriarch, whatever, of a God who's like a king, a God who's like a ruler, that kind of an image of God, right? You're in or you're out, that kind of thing. But that's not the God we worship. We worship the God that invites everyone to the table. Second, Jesus is rejecting the belief that blessings can be manipulated or must be manipulated or coerced through rituals or demonstrations of piety. Okay, you remember the publican and the Pharisee, right? Oh, thank God I'm not like that dude.
Right.
At least I'm not.
At least I'm not like that guy. I mean, we do it too. I get it.
Yeah.
But that's not what required. That's why oftentimes ritual, even in church, liturgical action can be, I can even think of it that way. Like, we have communion today, so I can be kind to people, or so I'm on the right track, or so I'm, I'm gonna become a priest, so that I'm gonna get into heaven. I mean, what, I can't say that that didn't occupy some portion of my brain.
Right.
Maybe I didn't, maybe it was much more nuanced and, differently articulated, but maybe at the basis of it, that's what it's about. Right? So I can be better. Since I grew up being better, being better was important. Or actually being the best. Being the best was kind of important. So a correct vision of God and ourselves should lead to a completely different way of engagement. This is why Jesus invites us to simply ask him. Unlike other religious traditions, Jesus bestows on us the dignity of children rather than the humiliation of slaves.
And
All are
we might
welcome to
just
come, right?
ask.
All are welcome to come. He says, come. We have that statue out there that, sometimes it's just so powerful, I can hardly look at it. Come.
You mean the chosen out
Yes,
there?
ma'am.
I think it's just wonderful.
Yes.
Jesus has a sparkle in his eye, ready to say yes, yes.
Yes.
It's
Just
that
ask
little,
me.
the thing that catches me is that little hand that's doing this.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Me?
Me?
All right, y'all, it's time. If there's anything between 51 and 52 or 53 or 54 that you would like to cover, speak now or forever hold your peace. I mean, there is some good stuff in here because it's a question we all struggle with, like, how come my prayers aren't answered? Or how come my prayer was answered? And somebody else's hasn't been?
Sometimes God's no is the right answer.
Well, that's hard to tell people when they're sad or dying or,
Oh, I know, I've had enough, but not easy to take, but
yeah. So it can't be that. That can't be it. It can't be God just handing out cards willy-nilly at random. However, when we're talking about like organ transplants, and then, what prayers get answered? Is there some requirement? No, there's not some requirement. Then it might say, well, why pray? I can't, this is like his diagram here on page 134, right? The schematic is kind of like, turn left, answer is no, go back to the beginning, answer is yes, turn right. How come? Of course, I sometimes don't even know anymore what to pray for. What would be the right thing to pray about? How would it be? What would be the right thing?
God's will be done.
God's will be done. We have that prayer, right? Yeah. He tells this story that his daddy told him, right? Or maybe about in India, the little boy begging for the rupee. And then his dad gives him 5 rupees. And the boy's like, what? How do I get 5 rupees? I was only asking for 1. I don't think I have. Yeah,
I love that last sentence in this section. That was something that really caught my attention big time.
Yes.
When our Lord says no to our desires, it's because he loves us too much to say yes. He wants to offer us something far more valuable. He offers us himself.
it's such a good explanation, isn't it? I mean, yeah,
Great. It
Right.
is great because sometimes when things are hunky-dory, Ginger, to use Ginger's expression, we go on about our business and aren't really concerned about having a real relationship with God.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's an expression, grace grows best in the wintertime.
yeah, or in the desert, or in the, yeah.
Yeah. We are
the search
seeking,
for God begins point of
we
need.
seek God when all else is gone.
That's right.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
reading. So what
Great.
we'll do next week we will try to do,
Part 8.
part 8, because I think there's a lot of good stuff in that, in that section. Read to the end, and then maybe we'll do it a little differently in that you can just talk about ones that really stood out for you, okay? And 8 or 9, whatever has really touched your heart, or maybe made you mad, or terrified you, or whatever. Let me close by reading this little bit. This is, if you read Psalm 26, it's about judgment. But he wrote, that I may find my peace in all he wills, I call on him in faith to judge for me. Since my own judgment fails and all my skills, in reckoning, forget his clemency. For when I judge myself, when I judge others, I do so with a false severity.
That's false one.
Severity, right? Harshness. He has a far more patient love that gathers all his lost and fallen children home into that habitation where he mothers, fathers, and befriends us, where the same love is lavished on the least as on the greatest, and he welcomes all who come to him. I may have shunned them, but the Son who died for them knows better than I do. So let me see with his eyes from now on.